to Moving with Meaning. I'm your host, Krystal. We're in the middle of our Becoming series, a space for reflection, release, and realignment. Last time, we explored who I was, grieving old versions of ourselves and honoring the growth that got us here. So today, we're talking about what happens after the storm. When the dust settles, what do you do with all that hard-earned wisdom? That's where transformation really begins. This episode, Shift Happens, is all about turning life's toughest lessons into leadership superpowers. The mistakes, the pivots, the heartbreaks, they weren't detours, they were directions. Bet you heard that here before. Every challenge gives you data about your resilience, your boundaries, your brilliance. The question is, are you still replaying the pain, or are you using the wisdom? Because confidence doesn't just appear, it's built when you finally trust what life has already taught you. All right, in today's conversation, we're going to discuss reflecting on key turning points in your leadership and personal strategy, finding the message in the mess, and shifting from self-critique to self-celebration. Ooh, that's another new one in there. I like it. So think of it like kintsugi, and I think that's how you say it. You know, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The cracks aren't hidden, they're highlighted. Each line tells a story of where it's been and what it's survived. That's what self-trust looks like. It's leadership made stronger by the very breaks you once tried to hide. Here is this episode summary for today's focus. Transforming hard-earned wisdom into self-trust means reclaiming your own data, your emotional analytics. When you stop treating mistakes like enemies and start seeing them as educators, you lead with deeper compassion, sharper instincts, and unshakable confidence. It's how leaders move from reactive to resilient. Hey, that's good. I really like that. They had some really nice buzzwords in there that I constantly talk about. And I just love how we're just bringing them all together, especially in that one summary. Maybe you can do that. Hope you caught them. All right, let's talk about what happens when you stop collecting lessons and start embodying them. Wisdom doesn't work unless you walk it out. All right? Benefit number one, emotional clarity. You stop confusing fear with intuition and start making aligned decisions. Yeah, so we always talk about alignment. We actually talk about alignment professionally, right? So there's always this North Star, this vision, and there's this strategy that we are going to take to get there. But every little piece and solution that we put together, it should align back and basically go forth as far as getting us closer to that North Star and achieving that strategy and following things along, because that's where it starts to produce value, right? So we don't want to just go around doing stuff that we just think is going to matter. We got to think through them. We got to make sure that they're architected and they're focused on what we want the end result and outcome to be, right? So when you do that, sometimes when you're doing it basically with the tone of fear, you can confuse this stuff, right? And it can get really cloudy because you're not thinking with intention, if that makes sense, okay? And so you're starting to do things just to say, I'm doing something, right? And being productive. That's great that you're doing something and you're being productive in achieving that. But once it's done and we look at it and we say, gosh, we did a whole lot of work, we did great work, but it didn't get me any closer. You know what I mean? So think about that, and we want to make sure that we always clear the smoke, right? Clear the fog and really hone in on what we're talking about, both emotionally and with added bonus of clarity. All right, benefit number two, authentic confidence. You lead from experience, not ego, anchored, not armored. Yes, we do this all the time, don't we? So we talk about authenticity a lot, and we talk about confidence, but the idea behind that is you've lived a long time and you've gone through several different challenges. You've overcome barriers and you've had to go through some tough terrain to get there, right? So after you get all that, you kind of can boast yourself up and say, ooh, wait, I've done it all. I've done this, but trust me, you haven't. right? I've been in this game for 20 years just professionally, and I'm still hitting scenarios and people that I've never had to deal with before. And you would think, golly, I've been through so many things, I should be done. No, okay? Every time you get to that point in your place, something's gonna come back and throw it at you and say, okay, you think you got it? Try this one. And it knocks the wind out of you. I mean, seriously. So just be careful about that and always be humble. You have value. You have it. Okay. And then also, you want to be anchored in that value and anchored in that experience. Let that lead you. Let that guide you, right? And not use it as a place of armoring yourself, right? Emotional armor, right? And that's just when you kind of basically want to shut down or shut out people. And when you do that, it's very difficult to grow, right? So we got to fertilize. We got to look at that, and then we kind of got to gain confidence through all of that, because that experience is hard earned. Trust, okay? Last benefit, sustainable growth. You evolve without losing yourself in the process. Yeah, you know what? That is so important, right? And I think it adds to the ego, right? You think you've done so much and you've been so many places and you had so many successes and so many wins, right? You've had a lot of resilient moments where you got knocked down and you bounce back up and things like that. And so you start to become this different individual, right? The way that you talk and your tone, it doesn't speak of confidence, right? It speaks of arrogance. And so you start to lose yourself in the confidence, in the success. And we want to make sure that, again, we're back to being anchored in our values, our core values, right? And we got to make sure that we constantly do this reflection point, and we got to make sure that we constantly catch ourselves in that moment. That's only human, right? And I'm not saying I have never been there. I have been there. So everyone is going to go through these moments. Everyone's going to want to say high five, celebrate those wins and things like that. But we got to still keep moving, right? We don't want to change as we're moving and growing, right? So we want to keep that equilibrium right there. All right. Theory is cute, but wisdom only sticks when it meets real life. Dang it though, gosh. So let's bring this down from the clouds and into the conference room, the carpool line, and those 2 a.m. overthinking moments. You know you had them. Here's what this actually looks like when self-trust starts running the show. We'll go with the professional persona, all right? The over-deliverer, a manager who once equated worth with output, learns to trust their instincts and delegate, discovering that leadership isn't about control, it's about clarity. Yes. And that's really important, because sometimes you think you're on the right page, right? And this is classically me, an over deliverer. And I don't think I over deliver. I deliver what's expected. The problem is that people don't deliver the expected. So I always come in and it looks like I'm over delivering, but I'm like, no. If you look at every principle, every practice, these are the minimum required. And if they say, well, I've never seen this before, okay, well, they've under-delivered for you, right? I'm just delivering. You haven't seen over-delivery yet. But everywhere I go, because I'm just delivering best practice standards in all these things, and they've never seen it before, it looks like I'm overdoing it, which is fine. I'm not going to do whatever else, but I'm not going to toot my own horn, because I know I'm just giving them what's expected. You know what I mean? So I keep myself anchored in on that point of view. But yeah, there are moments where I tend to over deliver, where I'll put additional presentations together for a meeting or whatever else, right? And I don't have to do that. Just some things, sometimes I think it's good practice. I'm so used to good practice. It's like, you think about it, you're like, maybe I can do more. And if I do more, they'll appreciate me more. They'll value me more. This, that, and the other. And then it's just never really true. It's just not, right? You get your kudos, you get your high fives, and pat on your back, and you kind of whatever else, but you can, over output yourself. So you want to make sure that you delegate any of those activities and make sure that you're training as you go along, right? And again, it's about self-control, right? Know when you're starting to overdo. It's okay. I get so busy sometimes where I get anxious because I've done everything I need to do and I'm not doing anything. So I'm like, okay, what else could I be doing? And that's just a learned behavior that anyone will tell you. When you go and you get your first job, they say, like, don't just stand around, find something to do. And then you take that into business and you're kind of like, but I've done everything. Well, yeah, you've earned that rest and that break, so take it. Just do it. All right. Personal persona. The recovering perfectionist, someone who used to replay every misstep, now practices gratitude for lessons, realizing that growth doesn't require guilt, it requires grace. Yes. And I am a recovering perfectionist. True be told. Okay? So, yeah, I used to replay a lot of the mistakes. How could I have handled that better? How could I have done this? Whatever else. And then, are they still hanging on to that? Because when I make a mistake, I'll learn from it. But sometimes when another person is involved in that mistake or impacted in that mistake, I'm thinking, oh gosh, are they thinking terrible of me? What are they thinking now? How do I even communicate with them? It's gonna be awkward going into this next conversation. Like, it's all of these things start to abound, right? And the only thing I can ever think about doing is practicing gratitude, right? And so when I'm in a moment where I was really, I don't want to say defensive or aggressive, but I wasn't myself, right? My patience had reached its limit, and I know my tone changed, and I've started to overspeak and cut them off and things like that. I will come back in the next moment and say, you know what, I apologize, right? I was impatient, and this is why. This is where my frustration was leading to. I felt that I was being questioned. I felt that I wasn't being heard or listened to or anything like that. I just felt I was being talked at. And this is that, the other, okay? And I'll come back and do that, right? And they're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. That's the only way I know how, and that has been very good for me as far as just kind of say, let's just go ahead and get it out, right? And not worry about it. But it's been great for me. I mean, why don't y'all try it and see how it works for you, right? All right, now here's where things get tricky. Transformation doesn't come with an instruction manual, of course. It comes with resistance. So let's unpack why trusting yourself can feel so hard, even when you earned it. All right. Number one frustration we got is over-identifying with mistakes, confusing what happened with who you are. Yeah, you know what? I think that's very true, because we identify with our mistakes more than we identify with our successes. It's ridiculous. But we do it. I do it, right? And you're constantly, which makes you kind of constantly replay that pain, which makes you constantly feel like you have to continually prove yourself and recover from something that just happened. And it's a fluke. It's not a pattern. It's not a habit. It's not a routine, unless it is, and then we gotta do something else. But you gotta understand that this is where you were, and this is how those environments were in those moments. This is where you are now, completely different, very different. Right? And so who you are now is not who you were, right? And you can't constantly replay and continue to just confuse yourself with all of the things that happen, because you're not your actions. You're who you are in that moment, right? All right, next one. External validation loops, waiting for someone else to confirm you've learned enough. Oh, yes, that was me. That was me. And I'm not going to lie to you. Not only was it me, I did get external validation. Let me be very clear on that. I got tons of external validation, right? But I still did not believe in myself. What I did was I would say, okay, when people start saying this, then I'll know I've learned enough. Then when they started saying that, I started figuring out other ways where I was like, no, I'm not enough. So you will even confuse yourself and almost invalidate people who are validating you. You'll do it to yourself. So it's a constant loop of validation in general, but externally, yeah, a lot of people are waiting for someone else to notice them, or for someone else to say the things that they're saying. And I think a lot of companies do this to this day, which is at the beginning of the year, they put together goals or objectives that they plan to target that year, whether it's personal, professional goals that you're reaching, and how are you going to contribute back to not only yourself, but how that contributes to the company. And then you follow through that. You have these checkpoints throughout the year to make sure and kind of have you evaluate like where you are on this. Like, are you still going that target? Things like that. And so I think that is very important to do, because it forces people to look at themselves and what they're doing, right? Versus what others are saying that they're doing. And I love that. So put that into practice. Even if your company doesn't do it for yourself. All right, number 3, fear of repeating the past. Mistaking awareness for avoidance instead of wisdom for navigation. Woo! Yes. So yeah, the moment you become aware, right, you start to also say, okay, I'm feeling this way. I'm going to avoid the situation. instead of deal with it or try to figure out how I'm going to work through it or whatever else. So yes, that can happen. I think there are certain scenarios when avoidance, I know it's going to sound weird, but avoidance could be necessary, right? It's just this person is just so rigid or so uh, into who they are, right? They're just right there. This is who they are. This is how they talk, and this is how they take information in. They haven't grown to that point of awareness that you have, and so you have to meet them where they are. And if meeting them where they are and how they are is basically, I can only tolerate 30 minutes of this conversation with you before I start to lose my patience, right? Or when I'm in this conversation with you, I'm not going to speak much or talk much because it's triggering for you for whatever reason. Those are things that are putting in place to avoid, I don't want to say confrontation, but avoid conflict, right? To improve the working relationship. But you can't do that for so long, right? So you want to make sure that because you can't constantly dim your light because someone else is refusing to grow beyond themselves. You can't do that. So you got to look at that and kind of say, okay, wisdom wise, how can I navigate this conversation better, right? Wisdom wise, what can I do to open up and gain a better working relationship? What are some options? So think of things in that respect, right? Because yeah, you don't want to repeat the past. So you look for opportunities and alternatives to basically make the situation better. All right. So how do we flip the script, right? How do we turn those hard-earned lessons into momentum instead of memory? All right, we're gonna get you some strategies in here. Strategy number 1, reflect with receipts. Don't we all want those? Keep a proof of progress list. Document wins, lessons, and brave decisions to remind yourself what you've survived and achieved. I love this. I adore this one. And I actually have a colleague at one of my projects, or one of my clients, who actually suggested, and this is what she does. She keeps her own list of progress over time. So, and I think that's great, because as you're doing things, you're documenting what your responsibilities are, but you're also documenting the impact of the importance of what you did, right? The success you did and all those things. But I think even if you want to come for a raise or something else, it's great to pull that stuff out, right? Because people are good at forgetting all the good stuff that you do, but you shouldn't. So it's good to document. A lot of people don't like documentation, and that's unfortunate. But once you do documentation and you see how it starts to kind of play in your favor, it literally pays. At that time it took for you to document that, it pays 10 times over. I mean, I love it, right? So I think keep your receipts, use that sheet as a receipt, and then make sure you remind yourself. Anytime you're doubting yourself, go back at that sheet and look and say, nah, I'm doing a dang thing. All right, strategy number 2, reframe the narrative. Swap self-blame for self-awareness by asking, what did this teach me about what I value? I like that too. So one of the items that I value that's high on my list, or one of my core values, is dependability. Okay. And I am incredible about this. So what happens is, if I make a commitment and then for some reason I have to cancel it, I will blame myself and kind of say, what could I have done better? I should have done this, I should have done this, or whatever else. No. So you don't want to do that, right? Because it's just so keen to my moral code, is to be dependable. You know why? Because when you have feelings of abandonment and betrayal that are so deeply rooted in you that you've experienced, you kind of turn that and say, okay, I don't want to do that to someone else, right? And so I'm always concerned about the commitments that I make. A lot of times when you talk to people, it's if I say I'm going to do something, they know I'm going to do something because I have a record of it, right? And if I say I cannot do something, I literally cannot do it. But people can get caught up in you constantly being okay until you get to the moment where you're not available, right? So you have to be self-aware and kind of say, what did this teach me, right? And it's just to kind of say, okay, to learn to say no more often, even when you can, right? Because sometimes saying yes and being available, people just they just get used to it, and that's just natural. So it's kind of one of those routine activities. But just reframe the narrative, and you'll get it. Last strategy that we got going on here is celebrate the shift. Don't just process lessons, practice them. Use daily micro decisions to act from your new awareness, not your old wounds. Yes. Remember, we're lacing up and rebuilding that pottery back with pieces of gold. So you're shimmering all day long, right? We accept ourselves in all our imperfections, in all of our shortfalls, and all of our successes. Okay, we're all of this, and we all want to put this back together. So we want to make sure that we're not only processing our lessons, but we're practicing them. And what's important to me is when I'm telling and giving advice or coaching, I'm not telling anyone that anything that I would not do. Right? We may go over a few things, and I'm gonna say like, "How do you feel about that?" And if they ask me like, "Well, have you been through?" I'm like, "No, I mean, I haven't. I've never came across a scenario where I've had to do X, Y, and Z because these things have worked in the past. So until that changes, I mean, that's great. So look at things and practice what you preach, and it truly is, right? And you want to make sure that you're. And when we talk about moving from a place of awareness and not from your old wounds, you don't want to keep those reflections and those memories, even and those emotions of what happened in that moment, because it makes you bitter. It really does starts to imprint itself on you until you become aware and you acknowledge that, whoa, I'm about to do this because of X, Y, and Z. I'm going to change, right? And make a decision based on this, right? And you learn every time. I hope that helps y'all. So as you head into the rest of your week, take this with you. Your wisdom isn't just something you know, it's something you live. Let every choice pause and pivot, reflect the lessons you've already learned and earned. Please do. Now, let's close with something to remind you what all that growth is really worth. You know, wisdom has a funny way of showing up. It rarely arrives during calm seas. It's forged in the storms, the setbacks, the sleepless nights you thought would take you out. Those fires didn't break you, they built you. So as you walk into this week, walk like someone who's been refined, not reduced. You've earned every spark of clarity and confidence you carry. So remember, your greatest wisdom was forged in the fires you thought would break you, and now you're the light someone else is looking for. I hope y'all enjoyed that little piece there. I certainly did. As a reminder, if you want more of me that delve into deeper topics, check out my podcast, Moving with Meaning, the podcast. I'm on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Check out my website, movingwithmeaning.com. Also, if you are interested in my path to emotional resilience, I wrote my business memoir that takes you on my 8-year journey in a tough, competitive environment. You can find it on Amazon by the title Embrace the Code, Cultivating Emotional Resilience in a Tough IT Culture. Here is my graphic with all of my social media connections. Hit your girl up or just follow along. Maybe something will pop out at you. Also, if you are particularly inspired by any of my conversations or episodes and think this would be a good match for your next event, I'm your gal, I'll speak. Or you're interested in converting this into a workshop, I've got you covered. Think team building events. Perhaps this is right in line with your own experience and want to partner with me to add a bit more oxygen to that spark. I'm a coach. Maybe finding the right words for your own memoir or ebook has you all balled up in knots. Well, I'm a ghostwriter that can put your thoughts and ideas to paper. So if any of these or those strike your interest and you just want opportunities, take the first step and book me completely free using this QR code. Yes! Another great episode. All right, that's all the time I got for today. Don't forget, your glow didn't come from perfection, it came from perseverance. Until I see you again, just keep moving.